Hi, and welcome to today's weekly currents. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Top scientists warn that the Trump policies are causing a climate of fear in research. A lab manager in the Molecular Diagnostic Lab prepares milk samples for testing at the Animal Health Diagnostic Center at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York on December 10th, 2024. An increased concern over a strain of the H5N1 avian flu. Nearly 2,000 leading American scientists, including dozens of Nobel Prize winners, have issued a stark warning. That the U.S. lead in science is being decimated by the Trump administration. Cuts in research and growing climate fear that jeopardizes independent research. An open letter from members of the U.S. National Academies of Science. Engineering and Medicine, made public on Monday, outlines grave concerns. A climate of fear has descended on the research community, the letter says. Researchers, fearing for their jobs, are removing their names from publications, abandoning studies, and rewriting grant proposals and papers to remove scientifically accurate terms, such as climate change, that agencies are flagging as objectionable. Science gave us the smartphones in our pockets, the navigation systems in our cars, and life-saving medical care. The letter says, we count on engineers when we drive across bridges and fly in airplanes. Businesses and farmers rely on science and engineering for product innovation, technological advances, and weather forecasting. Science helps humanity protect the planet and keep pollutants and toxins out of our air, water, and food. As the administration cuts federal funding for scientific agencies, ends grants to scientists, and defunds laboratories, there is real danger in this moment. Authors say, the nation's scientific enterprise is being decimated. In recent weeks, the National Institute of Health, NIH, has halted consideration of new grant applications. and delayed decisions about funding disease research. As of Tuesday, layoff notices were also going out at NIH and FDA. But the details were not immediately known. In addition, the Trump's White House efforts to eliminate what it views as woke initiatives have included banning words and phrases such as health disparities and climate science. Just days ago, the NIH also rescinded a scientific integrity policy aimed at thwarting political interference in order to ensure alignment with administration's priorities. We're seeing this across sectors in which the government is exerting pressure to make changes that conform with ideological perspectives rather than intellectual independence. According to Dr. Stephen Wolf, a professor of family medicine and population health at Virginia Commonwealth University, who is a co-author of the letter, the very research that will help improve our health is being defunded, he says. This is likely to have the opposite effect. In one instance, a public health study about inequities in smoking for rural young adults with withdrawn from publication in Public Health Reports, the official journal of the U.S. Surgeon General, and the U.S. Public Health Service. The study's authors say that the paper was accepted for publication. Editors instructed them to remove language relating to gender and sexual orientation, citing compliance with Trump's executive order. As a result, study co-author Tamara Anton, director of the Center for Critical Public Health, says she and her colleagues opted to withdraw publication in the peer-reviewed journal. The expectation is that we remove the information really felt like political interference in science, and in fact was clearly interference in science, she says. Anton says she and her fellow researchers plan to submit the paper elsewhere, but we will not be submitting it to a journal that is supported by the federal government at this time, because this is a sign to us that they are not upholding principles of scientific integrity. NPR reached out to the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees public health reports, about the study's withdrawal and the scientist's open letter, but did not immediately receive a reply. The assault on scientific inquiry is unlike anything that Dr. Anna Rue, a professor of epidemiology at the Dornsife School of Public Health at Drexel University, says she has seen in her 30 years of research. Like Wolf, Rue is a co-author of the Open Letter. I think this is what's so shocking. Is arbitrary cuts to research, federally funded research, completely arbitrary and sudden cuts to projects that have been approved and reviewed by committees of scientists, Rue says. She says that she's concerned that the Trump administration's stifling of scientific freedom could have a chilling effect on the future of science in the U.S. I fear that we are going to lose our ability to attract these very, very capable young scientists, she says. In the past, they have made careers in the United States and have contributed to the health of the American people in many ways and globally. Rue says now they may feel that they're no longer welcome here. VCU's Wolf agrees, saying public investment in the U.S. science since the end of World War II has made it the envy of the world. But that could easily be undone, he cautions. The broad, sweeping effects of the administration's attack on our research infrastructure is going to affect the lives of Americans in diverse ways, he says, and the effects are likely to be long-lasting. Crumbling trust in American institutions. A MAHA activist takes on Girl Scout cookies. It's been a great year for Zen Honeycutt and her grassroots advocacy group, Moms Across America. President Trump appointed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a longtime ally and advisor for her organization to become the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. Honeycutt, who considers herself part of Kennedy's Making America Healthy Again MAHA movement, literally cried tears of joy when she heard Kennedy was selected. And she traveled to Capitol Hill, where she had a front row seat at Kennedy's confirmation hearing. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, cited her organization's work when introducing a bill to eliminate toxic substances in school lunches and increase support for organic farmers and others who farm using sustainable practices. After years of having her research and advocacy dismissed as fringe, kooky, or ignorable by mainstream outlets, scientists, or regulators, and much of the public, Honeycutt's organization recently co-sponsored a study that got lots of people talking about toxic contaminants in the U.S. food supply. The study made a big splash, probably because it was focused on something as American as apple pie: Girl Scout cookies. It found traces of heavy metals: arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, aluminum, and an herbicide called glyphosate, the active ingredient in the weed killer Roundup in the cookies. This is not just about Girl Scout cookies, Honeycutt says. Pretty much all cookies, unless they're organic, are gonna have the same results. In fact, a lot of food in general. Anything that's not organic is probably going to have similar results. Non-organic conventional foods are exposed to synthetic pesticides and herbicides like glyphosate, and heavy and other metals can be found in lots of food, including organic foods, because they're often found in the environment, including soil that plants absorb and animals eat. At least 2 fact-checking sites have investigated this study of Girl Scout cookies and have concluded that its findings are misleading and basically not as scary as they may sound. We spoke with a toxicologist, Joe Zagorski, at Michigan State University Center of Research on Ingredient Safety, who said something similar. Zagorski criticized the cookie study for its small sample size, 25 cookies, its lack of peer review, and other methodological issues. He contended that the levels of heavy metals and aluminum and herbicide that the study found in the cookies are not dangerous. The level of glyphosate found in the Girl Scouts cookies, for example, is so extremely small. Zagorski says that a 70-pound child would have to eat over 73,000 cookies a day to reach a level that could cause concern over their lifetime. Look, maybe I could do it, but that's a lot of cookies. Zagorski says it's a similar story with the trace amounts of heavy metals and aluminum found in the cookies. This is all okay, he assured us. They're saying it's toxicology. The dosage makes the poison. And this dosage, he says, according to a lot of peer-reviewed scientific evidence and government regulatory standards, is so low that it's not a concern. The study, nonetheless, has proved to be a PR nightmare for the Girl Scouts. It went viral on social media and was referenced by juggernaut podcaster Joe Rogan. It even recently inspired a pending class action lawsuit against the Girl Scouts, which generated another wave of bad press. While we don't comment on pending litigation, we remain committed to vigorously defending ourselves against these allegations and supporting our Girl Scouts throughout the country who are actively learning entrepreneur and leadership skills through the Girl Scouts Cookie Program, said a Girl Scouts at the USA spokesperson. The Girl Scouts published a blog post in February addressing the study and assured the cookie eaters that Girl Scout cookies are safe to consume and are manufactured in accordance with all food safety regulations. Criticisms of moms across America's study aside, the attention it has received could be a win for Honeycutt's goals of getting more Americans to reconsider what they put into their bodies. avoid conventional foods, and buy organic. And question whether food companies and the government are doing a good enough job of making sure our food is safe. The whole saga shines a spotlight on the rising levels of distrust in American institutions. In 2025, no organization is above suspicion, even the Girl Scouts. And this breakdown is trust compliances. Solutions to a core economic problem we face in our consumer society. We often lack complete information to assure us that what we consume is safe. What happens when those authorities lose people's trust? The economic problem behind food regulation. When we go to a grocery store and buy something, we face an economic problem. Economists have a wonky term for it. They call it asymmetric information. It's a mouthful, but the idea is simple in the food realm. We often don't really know or have a hard time verifying what's in the stuff we eat and drink, and that lacks information can create problems in a free market, like companies selling food that can make us sick, maybe slowly over years without us even knowing it. Consumers need information to make the best choices for themselves. And their families when they shop. And without that information, companies may not face strong enough market incentives to produce high quality or safe products. It's often cheaper to cut corners, use lower quality ingredients, and make food products in unsanitary conditions. If consumers don't really know what's going on, then companies may not face market pressure to do the right thing. The economics literature suggests that because of imperfect information, the free market can fail to operate in our best interests. Economists and policymakers have long cited the problem of asymmetric information as a core reason that food companies need to be regulated. Over the 20th century, lawmakers created the Food and Drug Administration and other agencies to ensure trust and safety in the food supply. And they required food companies to label their products with ingredients and nutritional information. This has helped consumers to make the leap of faith when buying and ingesting stuff made by strangers and overcome the asymmetric information problem. But as moms across America studies have shown, There are often small amounts of substances in our food that are not labeled. It's not just Girl Scout cookies. The organization, for example, sponsored tests for school lunches, fast food, beer and wine, and baby formula. And Honeycutt says they found contaminants that concern her in all of them. In some cases, scientists have directly engaged with these findings and concluded that the levels of contaminants they found aren't significant concern for public health. For example, an article in a scientific journal, Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology, investigated one of the Moms Across America studies that found glyphosate in urine and breast milk. It concluded the findings does not support the conclusion that these glyphosate concentrations present to a health risk to the public, including nursing children. However, Honeycutt believes ingesting even small levels of contaminants can affect our health. She says that these contaminants are so widespread through the food supply that they add up in our diets over a lifetime. Honeycutt is a strong believer in the health benefits of eating organic and non-GMO or non-bioengineered foods. She says that when making that switch for her family, they saw real health benefits. Having grown up in a hippy-dippy California and a frequent shopper at health food stores, I can tell you that many people, including my loved ones, believe that organic is healthier. They also tend to believe that organic is a signal of other desirable attributes, like tasting better or being made by small local farms with more love and care. Although this might not always be true. Despite these products typically costing more, the market for organic food has exploded over the last couple of decades. This is maybe why I was a bit surprised to hear from Zagorski that scientists doubt whether organic and non-GMO foods are really better for us. The scientific consensus on organic farming practices and GMO versus non-GMO is that non-GMO and organic foods are not safer than conventionally grown crops, Zagorski says. There is no major health benefit to eating organic versus non-organic. And so the fact of the matter of that is no. Non-GMO and organic are not healthier for us. This may be a tough one to swallow for many of us. Like, really? What about all the pesticides and herbicides and hormones and antibiotics and bioengineering in conventional foods? I've talked to various organic eaters about the scientific literature that suggests that organic isn't safer or healthier. And they told me things like scientific conclusions change over time. It certainly seems to be true in the area of nutrition science. which is difficult to conduct and evolves as a new evidence comes to light. Take wine. Scientific studies used to suggest that a glass a day of wine was fine, even healthy. Now, evidence is suggesting any amount of alcohol may be a cancer risk. It's a huge bummer. America's in the midst of what you call a food awakening, and people are questioning what we're putting in our bodies, like maybe never before. Researchers are connecting our diets to a surge in all sorts of health maladies, including obesity, heart disease, and cancer. This food awakening can be seen beyond just the explosion in demand for organic and non-GMO foods. It can also be seen in the growing concern about the health effects of consuming things like ultra-processed foods, sugar, alcohol, and seemingly ubiquitous microplastics, as well as in movements to ban food dyes and preservatives. Regulatory capture, another economic problem for food safety. For regulations to work in overcoming the problem of asymmetric information, it's critical that people trust that the regulators are looking out for them. But economists have long pointed out that sometimes regulators don't serve in public interest. They can come under the influence of the powerful companies they're regulating. Economists call this regulatory capture. It's an empirical question and a big debate in economics and policy circles when and why that happens and how to combat it. When defending their cookies, the Girl Scouts of the USA stressed that their trusted bakers remain committed to compliance with all food and safety standards and regulations set forth by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. And other relevant health authorities. Honeycutt says she agrees that the Girl Scouts are complying with existing regulatory standards, but she questions whether those regulations or lack of regulations are keeping the public safe. Honeycutt made clear that she believes big corporations have a big influence on the food and agricultural regulations that get implemented. Our system is corrupt, she says. I think we must strive as a democracy to overcome industry capture. Zagorski expressed a general faith in the food regulatory process. He went on at a great length about ethics rules that discourage conflicts of interest, transparency rules that enable consumers to look at the evidence, behind regulatory decisions, and how federal regulatory agencies make decisions based on peer-reviewed science. Zagorski says that regulations on glyphosate, heavy metals, and other contaminants are guided by the best available evidence, and that regulatory standards for allowable amounts in our food are set extremely low, out of an abundance of caution to make sure that everybody is safe in the population, even the most sensitive. I have 3 little kids, and I would have no issue giving them these cookies, says Zagorski. He stresses that the experts who analyze this data and set safety standards live in the same environment we live in. They're going to the same stores we go to. They're likely feeding their kids roughly the same things our kids are eating. And so I can't imagine a situation where someone would say that for the sake of monetary gain. I'm okay with making my child sick. But these days, Americans fed an information diet from social media. And subversive podcasts seem to increasingly distrust the experts and regulatory authorities. For a long time, the authorities helped American consumers overcome the problem of asymmetric information about the food. But now, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, a growing number of Americans are distrustful when authorities go against something seemingly intuitive, like the idea of ingesting low levels of herbicides and heavy metals over your lifetime will be bad for your health. And it can be easy to cast aspirations. Zagorski, for instance, is a highly credentialed professor at a university who has spent his career steeped in the science of this stuff. He has spent years studying the effects of food ingredients and contaminants and promoting public health. At the same time, in his institution, the Center for Research and Ingredient Safety, at Michigan State University discloses that it gets some of its funding from industry partners. Which include major corporations like the Coca-Cola Company, PepsiCo, the Hershey Co., and ConAgra brands. Should that make you trust him less? And what about Zen Honeycutt? She is not credentialed in science and often challenges scientific consensus. And her organization, Moms Across America, sells alternative medicine supplements, products like vaccine detox herbal extract, and life wave frequency patches on its website. Should that make you trust her less? Honeycutt rejects what seems to be the scientific consensus on issues like the health effects of small doses of glyphosate, aluminum, and heavy metals in cookies, as well as the claim that organic is not really better for us. We asked her if we can't trust what's considered the scientific consensus on what's safe, and if we can't trust the regulators tasked with looking out for our health, who can we trust? I think we should trust independent scientists that are not funded by corporations, she said. I think we should trust ourselves and our friends and family members and our community members that are close to us that have you either used certain products or eaten certain foods and it's worked for them. This is why we encourage in-person connections, and we should really tune into ourselves. Our bodies tell us what is not good for us. When you really tune in, when you eat something and it doesn't work for you, you should trust that. Honeycutt also expressed hope that Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will help improve trust in our system of food regulation. The Trump administration, however, is slashing the workforce of the Department of Health and Human Services, including 3,500 jobs at the Food and Drug Administration. A recent department fact sheets stresses this reduction will not affect drug, medical device, or food reviewers, nor will it impact inspectors. But still, with a significantly smaller workforce, won't that undermine the FDA and other regulatory agencies' work? Honeycutt says she believes that Kennedy can do more with a smaller workforce than others have done with a bigger workforce, and that he will improve trust in our system of food regulation by, for example, making sure that people that are hired to fill these positions in these regulatory agencies can't be bought. In fact, she says she has submitted her resume, and if she's offered the right position, she's ready to enter public service. She says she trusts Kennedy more than probably any other political figure I've ever come in contact with. Since taking office, Kennedy has prioritized going after contaminants in our food supply, including baby formula. So what would it take for Honeycutt to eat some Thin Mints? For the uninitiated, what's a popular kind of Scout cookie, one that her study found has the highest level of glyphosate among the cookies tested? Her answer was simple: if they were organic. More billionaires than ever ranked in Forbes' annual list. Here are the top 10. The world's billionaires are richer than ever. According to Forbes magazine, annual list of the world's wealthiest people. The 39th annual version is out now. And includes 3,028 billionaires, the most ever recorded by Forbes. Forbes senior editor Chase Peterson Whithorn told Morning Edition, the annual world's billionaire list has $2 trillion more in wealth from just a year ago. In total, they have estimated $16.1 trillion in riches. It's a great time to be a billionaire, Peterson Whitthorne said. How does Forbes put this list together? Peterson Whitthorne said upwards of 100 reporters around the world work on the list, combing through everything from shares in publicly traded companies, trying to value private companies, looking at cash and investments, and how billionaires might be spending their money in their downtime. Everything from art and yachts and car collections and dinosaur bone collections and all kinds of crazy stuff billionaires owns. Peterson Whitthorne said, so it's sort of what the total value of all their assets are, minus any debt that they have. Some billionaires do open up to Forbes, Peterson Whitthorne said, but for those who don't, reporters also look at government registries, legal filings, and offshore registries. They work with information leaks and interview billionaires, their handlers, and their competitors. Try to find answers to questions that a lot of billionaires maybe would rather we don't ask. So who tops this year's list? The US has the most billionaires with 902, followed by China and Hong Kong at 516. India has the most with 205. Here are the top 10 ranked by wealth and by how they came by their fortunes. Elon Musk, $342 billion. Co-founder of Tesla and SpaceX. Mark Zuckerberg, $216 billion. Co-founder of Facebook and CEO of Meta. Jeff Bezos, $215 billion, founder of Amazon. Larry Ellison, $192 billion, co-founder of tech giant Oracle. Bernard Arnault and family, $178 billion, founder and CEO of LVMH, luxury goods and conglomerate, holding brands such as Louis Vuitton and Tiffany Co. Warren Buffett, $154 billion. Investor known as the Oracle of Omaha, CEO and chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. Larry Page, $144 billion, co-founder of Google and former CEO of its parent company, Alphabet. Sergey Brin, $138 billion, co-founder of Google and former president of Alphabet. Amancio Ortega, $124 billion, founder of clothing realtor Inditex, which sells Zara and various other brands. Steve Ballmer, $118 billion, former CEO of Microsoft. How might the public feel about billionaires these days? Peterson Whitthorne said public attitudes have shifted, noting the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011 that followed the 2008 Great Recession. There's also the right-wing populism that helped President Trump, a billionaire himself, win 2 terms. Though former advisor Steve Bannon insisted to NPR earlier this year that the president's seeming embrace of tech billionaires was not a win for them. Now we have sort of a billionaire president, bringing a lot of billionaires into his government, Peterson Whitthorne said. And you can see a lot of pushback and backlash against that. But it also depends on what side of the coin you're sort of looking at. Several billionaires have been tapped to serve in the second Trump administration, including Elon Musk, Education Secretary Linda McMahon, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Musk, whose work with the Special Department of Government Efficiency unit tasked with cutting government spending, has drawn the ire of some Americans on both sides of the aisle. Tesla dealerships have faced numerous protests in recent weeks. Though the richest man in the world is not showing signs of scaling back his work in the federal government, a lot of billionaires don't have great reputations these days, Peterson Whitthorne said, but on the other hand, they're more powerful than ever.